The spotlight beamed down on 7-year-old Emma Lawson, frozen before the microphone at the Westbrook Little Stars competition. The backing track played, but no voice joined it. From the middle rows, Matthew Reynolds, 38, recognized the fear in her eyes. The same look he'd seen in his own daughter Lily's eyes. Instinctively, he began gently clapping to the rhythm, his warm gaze focused on Emma, lips silently forming. "You can do it." Their eyes connected. The little girl took a deep breath, shoulders relaxing. In the VIP section, Catherine Davis, 32, CEO of Davis Media Group, watched with surprise and emotion as Emma slowly smiled and began to sing. When Emma finished, to enthusiastic applause, Catherine spotted the man with kind eyes hugging a brown-haired girl beside him. She approached them as the crowd dispersed. "I'm Catherine Davis, Emma's mother," she said. "Thank you for helping my daughter." "I just did what my daughter needs when she's scared," Matthew replied. "I'm Matthew, and this is Lily. Sometimes we need to see trust in someone else's eyes to believe in ourselves," he added gently. Catherine nodded, experiencing the unfamiliar feeling of realizing she'd been missing something important. Catherine Davis had become the ambitious young CEO of Davis Media Group after taking over and expanding the company following her husband's death in an accident 3 years earlier. At 32, she had been named Most Powerful Woman Under 35 by a business magazine, a glass award that sat prominently on her desk beside the family photo that grew increasingly outdated as months passed. The price of success had been sleepless nights and precious little time for Emma, a sacrifice Catherine justified as necessary for their financial security and future. Their luxurious penthouse apartment in the exclusive Riverside Towers overlooked the city's skyline, floor-to-ceiling windows offering spectacular views that Emma rarely noticed anymore. The space was immaculately designed, featured in an architectural magazine the previous year, but felt more like a showroom than a home. It was filled with expensive toys, but lacked the comfortable chaos of a space truly lived in by a child. Catherine raised Emma with the belief that success came from perfection, the way she herself had overcome the pain of losing her husband and running the company. Her days were meticulously scheduled from 5 in the morning until late at night, with business calls often interrupting the few moments she managed to spend with her daughter. The walls of her office were lined with awards and recognition for her business acumen, but the photo of Emma on her desk showed a smile Catherine rarely saw anymore. She loved her daughter unconditionally, but didn't know how to show it, except by pushing her toward achievements. The singing competition had been Catherine's idea, an opportunity for Emma to develop confidence and public speaking skills that would serve her well later in life. It hadn't occurred to her that her daughter might experience the same paralyzing stage fright that had gripped Catherine herself during her first board presentation after Richard's death. That day, a senior board member had given her a nearly imperceptible nod of encouragement that had somehow steadied her shaking hands. She had forgotten that moment until she saw the stranger, Matthew, do the same for Emma. Matthew Reynolds owned a small carpentry workshop called Reynolds Custom Woodcraft in the older part of town, specializing in handmade furniture design. The converted warehouse space smelled perpetually of sawdust and varnish, with sunlight streaming through large industrial windows, illuminating works in progress. He had sung in a local band before his wife left with another man 4 years ago, playing weekend gigs at coffee shops and small venues while building his carpentry business during the week. The departure of his wife had been both devastating and public in their small community, leaving Matthew to rebuild not only his life but also his daughter's sense of security and trust. His calloused hands and warm eyes were his identifying features. Hands that could shape delicate inlays for jewelry boxes and also swing Lily up onto his shoulders for a better view at community events. Matthew had gone through a period of depression after his wife's departure, closing his workshop for nearly 2 months before his elderly neighbor, Mrs. Jenkins, brought him a commission to build a dollhouse for her granddaughter. The project had saved him, giving him purpose when nothing else could penetrate the fog of abandonment and failure. His love for Lily had brought him back completely, her need for stability forcing him to establish new routines and rediscover joy in their changed circumstances. Despite receiving offers for larger contracts that would have significantly increased his income, He prioritized being available for his daughter's school pickup times and weekend activities. Their modest home above his workshop was filled with handcrafted wooden toys and musical instruments he had made for Lily. Though financially comfortable, Matthew chose projects that allowed flexibility rather than maximum profit. He understood stage fright intimately. He had once abandoned an important performance due to overwhelming anxiety and had learned to overcome it through small, patient steps. The morning after the competition, Matthew found himself thinking about the little girl with the frightened eyes and her elegant, tense mother. There was something familiar in Catherine's determination, the same driven focus he had once seen in himself, before his wife left and his priorities shifted dramatically. He felt dramatic. The corporate world Catherine inhabited was entirely foreign to him, but the underlying current of proving oneself, of pushing forward at all costs, resonated with his former ambitions. He wondered if he would ever see them again, then quickly dismissed the thought, as Lily came bounding down the stairs, asking about breakfast and weekend plans. Matthew pushed thoughts of the CEO and her daughter aside, focusing on making pancakes shaped like musical notes, a Saturday tradition that had begun when Lily first showed interest in singing at their local church. "Do you think that little girl will be okay, Dad?" Lily asked, drowning her pancakes in maple syrup. She looked really scared, like Tommy did before the science fair. Matthew flipped another pancake onto her plate, considering his response. "I think she will be. She just needs to find her confidence, like you did." He didn't mention the mother, the striking woman with tired eyes who seemed to carry the weight of expectations on her shoulders like an invisible cloak. Her mom looked fancy, Lily observed, with the directness of an 8-year-old, but kind of sad, too. Matthew nodded, surprised by his daughter's perceptiveness. "Sometimes grown-ups forget how to have fun," he said finally. "They get so busy being important that they forget the important things." 1 week after the competition, Matthew was repairing the sound system in the school's music room, a side job he had taken on through his connection with the music teacher, Mrs. Hoffman, whose dining table he had restored the previous year. Afternoon sunlight streamed through the windows, creating long streaks of light across the wooden floor. The school was mostly empty on this late Friday afternoon, the distant sounds of the janitorial staff and occasional announcements over the PA system the only interruptions to his work. Suddenly, he heard a small, hesitant voice singing from the corner of the room. Looking up from the tangle of cables he was organizing, he saw Emma sitting huddled on a piano bench, softly singing the song from the competition when she thought no one was listening. The song specialized on songs he'd loved. Her voice was clear and sweet, entirely different from the tentative performance at the competition. She sang with closed eyes, lost in the melody, small fingers tapping the rhythm on her knee. Matthew remained still, not wanting to interrupt this private moment that revealed the joy Emma actually found in music when pressure was removed. "You have a beautiful voice," Matthew said gently when she finished, startling Emma. Her eyes flew open, and she nearly dropped the songbook clutched in her hands. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to scare you." Emma regained her composure quickly, studying him with curious eyes. "You're the one who clapped for me at the competition, aren't you? The one with the warm eyes?" Her description caught Matthew off guard. He wasn't used to being seen so clearly, especially by a child. Just then, Catherine walked in, impeccably dressed even on a Friday afternoon, though she had traded her usual business suit for slim-fitting jeans and a cashmere sweater. She smiled when she saw Matthew, a genuine expression that softened the professional facade she typically maintained. "We meet again," she said, seeming less surprised than Matthew would have expected. "I didn't know you worked here." "Weekend side job," Matthew explained, gesturing to the sound equipment spread around him. "The carpentry workshop is my main business." He found himself wanting to explain that he wasn't just a handyman, then wondered why that mattered. Catherine nodded, her expression softening further when she saw Emma relaxed in his presence. The tension that had been evident in her shoulders at the competition seemed lessened today, though not entirely absent. "Emma told me she wants to continue singing lessons. First time in months." The subtle emphasis on the last sentence suggested a longer story, one filled with resistance and perhaps tears. "That's wonderful," Matthew replied, noticing how Catherine's professional facade momentarily slipped. revealing a mother who cared deeply but perhaps didn't always know how to show it. As they talked, Emma moved closer to Matthew, asking if his daughter also sang. The conversation flowed naturally until Catherine glanced at her watch and reluctantly mentioned they needed to leave for Emma's piano lesson. As they were leaving, Matthew found himself offering to help adjust the school's sound system for the upcoming spring recital. Catherine paused at the door, considering his offer before accepting, with a genuine "thank you." A small connection formed in the sunlit music room. In the weeks that followed, Catherine arranged for Emma to practice singing at the school's music room 3 times a week, and began changing her work schedule to personally pick up and drop off her daughter. The shift required moving standing meetings and reorganizing conference calls, changes that her executive assistant Melissa implemented with raised eyebrows but without comment. Catherine frequently encountered Matthew maintaining the sound equipment, his presence becoming a familiar part of these afternoons. Initially, their chance meetings consisted only of polite greetings and brief exchanges about Emma's progress. Catherine would sit in the corner of the room, answering emails on her phone while Emma worked with her strict vocal coach, occasionally glancing up when she heard her daughter's voice falter or strain. The vocal coach, Mr. Henderson, was a former opera singer with an impressive resume and limited patience, recommended by another executive whose daughter had recently performed at Carnegie Hall. His teaching style was technically precise but rigid, focusing on proper breathing techniques and pitch accuracy rather than the joy of singing. Emma followed his instructions dutifully but without enthusiasm, her earlier excitement fading with each correction and criticism. One afternoon, noticing Emma's tension before a session with the demanding instructor, Matthew suggested the singing to teddy bears game, a technique he had used to help Lily overcome her fear. He explained the concept during a moment when Mr. Henderson had stepped out to take a phone call, his voice low as though sharing a professional secret. "Sometimes it's easier to perform for someone who will never judge you," he explained to Catherine, who looked skeptical but didn't object when Emma's eyes lit up at the idea. Teddy bears are the perfect audience. They never fidget, never check their phones, and always think you're wonderful. His gentle teasing brought a smile to Catherine's face, a momentary crack in her composure that revealed a glimpse of the woman beneath the CEO title. The next day, Lily began accompanying her father after school, bringing her collection of teddy bears. The 2 girls quickly bonded over their shared love of music and stuffed animals, despite the year's age difference between them. Emma would practice her difficult competition pieces for the row of teddy bears, with Lily occasionally joining in for duets. Matthew quietly adjusted the microphone and sound, creating a gentle echo effect that delighted Emma. Catherine, instead of working on her phone throughout the practice as she had done previously, began sitting down to listen. She noticed Emma's smile becoming more natural, her voice growing more confident with Matthew and Lily present. Mr. Henderson initially objected to what he called childish distractions, but when Emma successfully mastered a particularly challenging passage that had been troubling her for weeks, he reluctantly acknowledged that perhaps the unconventional approach had merit. Catherine watched this transformation with mixed emotions, gratitude for Emma's progress, but also a nagging awareness that a stranger had found a way to reach her daughter when she had not. The afternoon sun cast long shadows through the music room windows as the girls practiced a simple folk song, their voices blending in sweet harmony. Emma no longer flinched when she missed a note, and Lily clapped enthusiastically after each attempt. From their seats outside the practice area, Catherine and Matthew engaged in their first real conversation, moving beyond polite small talk to something more meaningful. "She hasn't sung like that since before Richard died," Catherine admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My husband," she added, though the clarification wasn't necessary. Matthew had recognized the shadow of grief that occasionally crossed her face when watching Emma. "Music can be complicated when it's tied to loss," he offered, understanding filling the space between them. "It carries the memory but also the absence." Catherine nodded, surprised by his insight. She learned about his journey from aspiring musician to carpenter after his wife left. He heard about her struggle to balance running a company with raising a daughter alone. They shared the challenges of single parenthood, the unspoken loneliness, and the attempt to be both mother and father to their children. Neither noticed Emma watching them through the partially open door, smiling as she saw her mother laugh. Something rare in recent months. She used to sing all the time at home, Catherine confided, watching the girls through the window. After her father died, music became complicated. It was their special thing. She paused, remembering evenings when Richard would play the piano while Emma danced around the living room, their shared joy in creating music together. I thought pushing her toward excellence would honor his memory somehow. Matthew nodded, understanding filling the space between them. Lily stopped drawing when her mother left. It was something they did together. She only started again last year. He recalled the day he'd found Lily sitting at the kitchen table with colored pencils spread around her, tentatively sketching a butterfly. He'd been so overwhelmed he'd had to leave the room briefly to compose himself. "How did you help her through it?" Catherine asked. Her professional mask momentarily lowered, genuine curiosity in her voice. "I didn't try to replace what she lost," Matthew replied softly. "I just created space for something new." The simplicity of his answer made Catherine pause, considering how she had pushed Emma toward perfection rather than joy in music. Children are remarkably resilient if we give them room to find their own way back. As weeks passed, Catherine found herself looking forward to these afternoons, occasionally bringing coffee for herself and Matthew. Her assistant noticed the blocked time on her calendar. 3 afternoons a week marked Emma's music practice, with strict instructions not to schedule over it. The Davis Media Group executive team grew accustomed to their CEO leaving precisely at 4 o'clock on these days, something unprecedented before. While Cashman still maintained her demanding schedule, these small pockets of time became a respite from the constant pressure of running a company. She began to see parts of Emma she had missed, the way her daughter's eyes crinkled when she truly smiled, how she hummed under her breath when concentrating, the particular tilt of her head when listening to music she loved. For Matthew, these afternoons brought unexpected warmth to his routine. He found himself putting extra care into the music room's maintenance, replacing worn cables and adjusting acoustic panels to create the perfect sound environment. Lily blossomed in Emma's company, sharing stories and songs with her new friend. The teddy bear audience grew as both girls brought their favorites, creating a supportive circle of plush critics who never found fault with missed notes or forgotten lyrics. Matthew observed Catherine's gradual transformation, how her shoulders relaxed slightly when she entered the music room, how she sometimes removed her blazer and rolled up the sleeves of her silk blouse as she listened to the girls practice. He noticed how she tucked her phone away more frequently, giving Emma her full attention. These subtle changes reminded him of his own journey from workaholic craftsman to balanced father, the slow process of reordering priorities that had followed his wife's departure. On a rainy Thursday afternoon, Matthew arrived early to find Catherine already there, sitting alone in the music room. The steady drumming of raindrops against the windows created a soothing backdrop to the unusual silence. She explained that Emma's vocal coach had canceled due to illness. Instead of rescheduling or returning to the office, she had decided to wait, hoping to hear Emma practice anyway. "She sings differently when you and Lily are here," Catherine admitted, a hint of something like jealousy or perhaps gratitude in her voice. Her fingers traced patterns on the wooden chair arm, a rare moment of unguarded behavior from someone usually so composed. "There's a freedom in her voice that I haven't heard in years." Before Matthew could respond, the girls burst in, soaking wet from the rain but laughing, eager to show off a song they had been practicing secretly. Emma's damp hair curled around her face and Lily's rain jacket dripped onto the floor, creating small puddles neither child noticed. As Emma sang with newfound confidence, Catherine's eyes met Matthew's across the room, a moment of shared accomplishment passing between them. For the first time, they felt like partners in something important, not just acquaintances, connected through their children. After the impromptu performance, while the girls arranged their teddy bear audience for another song, Catherine surprised Matthew by inviting him and Lily to dinner that weekend. "Nothing fancy," she added quickly, seeing his hesitation. "Just pizza at our place. Emma would love it." The invitation hung between them, significant in ways neither fully understood. Matthew accepted with a smile, ignoring the small voice in his head that warned about the differences in their worlds. The dress rehearsal for the citywide Angel Voice competition was tense. The prestigious event, held annually at the Westbrook Performing Arts Center, attracted talented young singers from across the region and significant media attention. Emma repeatedly forgot lyrics to her challenging classical piece, and the vocal coach, Mr. Henderson, showed clear disappointment, tapping his baton against the music stand with increasing force. "You need to focus, Emma. This is a major promotional opportunity for the family," Catherine said, pressure evident in her voice. She had arranged for professional photographers to document Emma's performance, envisioning features in local media that would highlight both her daughter's talent and, indirectly, her own success as a parent, despite the tragedy of widowhood. The Davis Media Group logo discreetly appeared on the competition's program as a sponsor, a connection Catherine had arranged personally. "Not everything is about opportunities and careers, Catherine," Matthew interjected, unable to contain himself. He had been adjusting the microphone stand, a task that technically didn't require his presence but had become routine over the past weeks. "She's just a child." His words came out sharper than intended, carrying the weight of his own regrets about pushing too hard in his former life. "You don't understand," Catherine replied, trying to maintain composure though her cheeks flushed slightly. The rehearsal room suddenly seemed overcrowded, the pianist shifting uncomfortably on his bench, and Mr. Henderson pretending to study his notes. "I'm trying to give her opportunities I never had." The defensiveness in her tone revealed an old wound, something deeper than just ambition for her daughter. "By making her afraid to sing?" Matthew's question landed like a physical blow, cutting through the professional veneer Catherine worked so hard to maintain. The room fell silent, except for the distant sound of other performers warming up in adjacent practice rooms. Emma stood between them, eyes welling with tears, the elaborate performance dress suddenly seeming to weigh down her small frame. "I hate singing. I only do it because you want me to." The little girl's outburst shattered the tension, replacing it with something worse: the raw pain of a child caught between adult expectations. She ran to the dressing room, the sound of her footsteps echoing in the stunned silence she left behind. When Catherine followed, heels clicking rapidly across the polished floor, she accidentally overheard a conversation between the two children through the partially open dressing room door. Emma sat on a small velvet bench, Lily beside her, with an arm around her shoulders. "My mom always wants me to be perfect," Emma sobbed, mascara creating dark streaks down her cheeks. The makeup, insisted upon by Mr. Henderson for stage presence, made her look unsettlingly older than her 7 years. "Nothing I do is ever good enough." "My dad used to be like that too," Lily consoled her, offering a tissue from her pocket. "Until he forgot all the lyrics at his friend's wedding. He was singing a special song and just stopped in the middle. Everyone was staring." She mimicked a frozen, panicked expression that made Emma giggle, despite her tears. "Dad said that's when he realized failure isn't the worst thing. It's not trying at all." Catherine stood motionless, suddenly realizing Matthew understood her daughter better than she did. She saw herself through Emma's eyes, not as a supportive mother but as an unyielding force, pushing her child toward an ideal that served Catherine's vision rather than Emma's happiness. Deep down, she recognized she was sacrificing Emma's childhood for expectations that belonged to an adult world, not to a 7-year-old girl. The realization stung like a physical pain. She had become exactly what she had promised herself she would never be: a parent who valued achievement over happiness, just like her own parents had done to her. The vocal coach cleared his throat behind Catherine, reminding her that they had only 20 minutes left in the rehearsal space. She nodded mechanically, composing herself before entering the dressing room where the girls quickly fell silent. Emma's eyes were red-rimmed, her small shoulders hunched defensively. Catherine felt the familiar urge to press forward, to insist on excellence and perseverance, but Matthew's words echoed in her mind. Instead, she sat beside Emma and asked softly, "Would you like to take a break today?" The surprise in her daughter's eyes was answer enough, a small window into how Emma had come to expect pushing rather than understanding from her mother. Catherine canceled the remainder of the rehearsal, ignoring the vocal coach's protests about wasted time and upcoming deadlines. As they left the building, she saw Matthew and Lily in the parking lot, their heads bent together in serious conversation. When Emma called out to Lily, Catherine could not bring herself to meet Matthew's eyes. She felt exposed, as though he had witnessed something deeply private: her failure as a mother, her misplaced priorities, her inability to see what her daughter truly needed. After the dress rehearsal, Catherine and Matthew stopped speaking to each other. The easy camaraderie of the music room afternoons vanished, replaced by an awkward distance that both adults maintained and neither acknowledged. Catherine rented a private practice room at the prestigious Westbrook Academy of Music, far from the school where Matthew worked. She instructed her assistant to reschedule all meetings that had been moved to accommodate the school practice sessions, throwing herself back into work with renewed intensity. Emma became quiet, her eyes evasive whenever music was mentioned. Each practice session now consisted of 2 tense hours with the strict vocal coach, Mr. Henderson, doubling down on technique to make up for lost time. No more teddy bears, no more laughter, just scales and breathing exercises and constant corrections. In his carpentry workshop, Matthew cut wood with greater intensity than usual, the rhythmic sound of his saw drowning out thoughts he didn't want to examine too closely. He had overstepped, inserting himself into a family dynamic that wasn't his to question. Who was he to judge Catherine's parenting when his own was far from perfect? Yet the memory of Emma's tearful declaration haunted him, reminding him too much of his own daughter's pain when performance had replaced joy in his former approach to music. Lily drew a picture of 2 girls singing with teddy bears, then folded it and tucked it into a drawer, her usual enthusiasm dimmed by the unexplained absence of her new friend. "I miss Emma," she whispered one evening as Matthew tucked her into bed. He had no answer. Only a growing sense of loss that seemed disproportionate to their brief acquaintance with the Davis family. Catherine stood in her elegant office on the 32nd floor of the Davis Media Tower, looking out over the city as twilight descended. The Businesswoman of the Year trophy she had just received sat on her desk, beside a photograph of Emma taken 2 years earlier. A smiling face she no longer saw. The awards ceremony had been that afternoon, a prestigious event covered by local business media. Catherine had given a polished acceptance speech about balancing career and motherhood, words that now tasted like ashes in her mouth. Her phone rang constantly, but she didn't answer, letting calls go to voicemail for perhaps the first time in her professional life. Instead, she opened an old photo album she kept in her desk drawer. Pictures of her husband playing piano for Emma, simple, happy family evenings before everything changed. There was Richard, teaching Emma to play Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, his patience evident even in the frozen moment of the photograph. Another showed them at the park, Richard playing a portable keyboard while Emma danced in Autumn Leaves. The images blurred as unexpected tears formed in Catherine's eyes. When had music transformed from joy to obligation? When had she started seeing Emma singing as a reflection on herself rather than an expression of her daughter's spirit? Her executive assistant knocked tentatively, reminding her of the board meeting scheduled in 15 minutes. Catherine nodded, closing the album and straightening her shoulders. But as she gathered her presentation materials, her eyes fell on the competition program still in her purse, with Emma's name printed among the finalists. The weight of her choices pressed down on her with sudden clarity. She had been trying to protect Emma from the pain and uncertainty that had followed Richard's death, by creating structure, by pushing for excellence, by filling every moment with productive activity. But in doing so, she had denied her daughter the space to grieve, to play, to simply be a child. That night, as she tucked Emma into bed, Catherine noticed her daughter had been crying. The revelation was jarring. How many other tears had she missed while checking emails or preparing presentations? "I miss Daddy," Emma whispered, clutching the stuffed rabbit Richard had given her on her 4th birthday. "He never got angry when I sang wrong." These simple words cut straight to Catherine's heart, making her realize she had become someone she never wanted to be, like her own parents, who had viewed her artistic interests as frivolous distractions from academic achievement. She sat on the edge of the bed long after Emma had fallen asleep, watching her daughter's peaceful face and wondering when she had lost sight of what truly mattered. The constant pressure to prove herself as a female CEO, to show the world that a widow could succeed in a man's business, had blinded her to the damage she was doing to the one person who mattered most. Catherine gently brushed a strand of hair from Emma's forehead, remembering how Richard used to do the same each night. "I'm getting it all wrong," she whispered to her sleeping daughter, "but I promise I'll try to do better." In his workshop above the modest apartment he shared with Lily, Matthew sanded a small wooden music box he had been creating for weeks. The delicate inlay work required intense concentration, but his mind kept drifting to Emma's tear-stained face and Catherine's defensive posture. He understood her drive all too well. Hadn't he once been just as obsessed with success, before his wife's departure had forced him to reevaluate everything? The music box was nearly finished, a dancing bear carved on its lid. He had started it as a gift for Lily, but now wondered if there would ever be an appropriate moment to give the matching one to Emma. Lily's voice interrupted his thoughts, asking when they would see Emma again. Matthew had no answer, only a growing sense that something important had been lost. The night before the competition, Catherine found Emma sitting by the window in her bedroom, clutching a pillow tightly. The city lights spread out below them, a glittering tapestry that Emma barely noticed. "I don't want to sing anymore," the little girl whispered, her voice thick with unshed tears. "I can't be what you want me to be." The words struck Catherine with the force of revelation. She saw suddenly what she had been doing, trying to mold Emma into a vision of perfection rather than nurturing the child who already existed, perfect in her imperfection. Instead of persuading or imposing as usual, Catherine sat down beside her daughter and pulled Emma into her arms. The familiar scent of her daughter's shampoo brought a rush of emotion so intense she could barely speak. "I'm sorry," she said, her voice breaking. "I've forgotten the most important thing." The admission of failure was foreign to her, a woman who had built her career on projecting certainty and confidence, but in this moment, with her daughter's small body tense against her, nothing mattered except honesty. "What's that?" Emma looked up, surprised by her mother's change. The wariness in her eyes was another blow to Catherine's heart. When had her child learned to be cautious around her? "That I love you not because of what you can do, but simply because you're my daughter." Catherine kissed her forehead, feeling Emma gradually relax against her. "Your father used to tell me that, but I forgot." She remembered Richard's gentle corrections when she pushed too hard, his reminder that childhood was fleeting and precious. "He would be so disappointed in how I've been treating you." "No, he wouldn't," Emma said with the simple wisdom of children. "He'd just say you were trying your best." Her forgiveness, offered so easily, brought fresh tears to Catherine's eyes. They sat together in comfortable silence, watching the city lights, until Emma fell asleep in her mother's arms. Catherine carried her to bed, something she hadn't done in years, marveling at how light yet substantial her daughter felt. The next morning, instead of going to the office, Catherine drove to Matthew's carpentry workshop in the revitalized warehouse district across town. She sat in her luxury car for several minutes, observing him through the large front windows. He moved with purpose among the tools and wood, occasionally checking a design on a battered laptop. Unlike the polished executives she worked with daily, there was an authenticity to his movements, a direct connection between his hands and what he created. When she finally entered, the bell above the door announced her arrival. Matthew looked up, surprise evident on his face. "Catherine," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth, "I didn't expect to see you here." The workshop smelled of freshly cut pine and varnish, the morning sunlight highlighting dust motes dancing in the air. She didn't speak about the competition or their previous disagreements. "I need your help," she said simply, vulnerability replacing her usual confidence. "I need you to tell me how to be a better mother." The rawness of her request hung in the air between them, perhaps the most honest thing she had said to anyone since Richard's death. Matthew set down his tools and gestured toward two wooden stools in the corner of the workshop. They sat in silence for a moment before he spoke, choosing his words carefully. "I don't have any special wisdom, Catherine. I make mistakes with Lily every day." His humility was refreshing after the corporate world of posturing and strategic positioning Catherine inhabited. "But you see her," Catherine replied, the observation coming from a place of newfound clarity. "Really see her. I've been looking at Emma through a lens of my own making, seeing what I wanted for her, not what she needed from me." The admission cost her something, but also released a burden she had been carrying too long. Matthew considered his response, running a hand through his hair. After my wife left, I was determined to give Lily everything, to be perfect at both roles. I nearly burned myself out trying. The pain of that time was still evident in his voice, though tempered now by distance and healing. Then one night I found her crying because she thought I was angry all the time. That's when I realized that what she needed wasn't perfection, just presence. Just me, showing up, being there. Catherine nodded, tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Emma's competition is tonight. She says she doesn't want to sing, but I think what she really doesn't want is to disappoint me. The insight was new, part of her awakening to what her pressure had created in her daughter. What does she love to sing? When no one's watching or judging, Matthew asked, the question cutting to the heart of what had been lost. She used to sing those simple folk songs her father taught her, Catherine said softly, remembering evening rituals nearly forgotten in the rush toward achievement. Before I pushed her toward competition pieces and classical training, Matthew stood and walked to a shelf lined with completed woodworking projects. He selected a small wooden box and handed it to Catherine. The craftsmanship was exquisite, the wood polished to a soft glow under her fingers. I made this for Emma. It's a music box. There's a matching one for Lily. The gesture touched Catherine deeply. This man who barely knew them had created something so personal, so thoughtful. She opened it, and a simple melody played. You are my sunshine. The same song she had heard Emma humming to herself when she thought no one was listening. The song Richard used to sing as he rocked their daughter to sleep. The familiar tune brought a fresh wave of emotion, memories of a happier time, when music meant connection rather than performance. Let her choose, Matthew said quietly. Tonight, the competition, her music, let it be her choice. That's all any of us really want, isn't it? To have some say in our own lives? His gentle wisdom resonated with Catherine, who had been making all of Emma's choices in an attempt to protect her from the pain of an unpredictable world. In the waiting room before the competition, Emma sat huddled in a corner, wearing her sparkly sequined dress that suddenly seemed too elaborate, too adult for her small frame. The other child competitors warmed up around them, some practicing scales while stage parents hovered anxiously. Catherine entered, holding a small gift box and a teddy bear she had purchased on her way from Matthew's workshop. I have something for you, she said softly, kneeling to be at eye level with her daughter, ignoring the designer dress touching the floor. Inside the box was a silver necklace with a music note pendant, a gift from Emma's father before he passed away, kept in Catherine's jewelry box until now. Your daddy used to say, singing isn't about winning, it's about giving your heart a voice, Catherine whispered, helping Emma fasten the necklace. The cool silver against Emma's skin seemed to center her, a tangible connection to the father she missed and the joy music had once brought her. I'll be here, whether you sing or not, whether you win a prize or not. I'm not going anywhere. She hugged her daughter tightly, feeling Emma's heart beating against her own. And if you're scared, look for the man who clapped for you last time. She didn't need to explain further. Emma's smile showed she understood exactly who Catherine meant. In the audience section, Matthew and Lily were already seated with a handmade Go Emma sign they had prepared. Lily had decorated it with glitter and musical notes, her artistic talent evident in the cheerful design. Catherine approached them, leading Emma by the hand. Several acquaintances from her business circle nodded in recognition as she passed. But for once, Catherine didn't feel the need to stop and network. May we join you? She asked Matthew, a genuine smile appearing for the first time that evening. The backstage area buzzed with activity as young performers prepared for their moment in the spotlight. Makeup artists touched up sparkly eyeshadow on older girls, while stage mothers adjusted bows and smooth flyaway hair. In the midst of this controlled chaos, Emma stood quietly, her small fingers touching the music note pendant at her neck. Catherine knelt before her daughter, straightening the sash on Emma's dress, not out of perfectionism, but as an excuse to be close, to provide reassurance through proximity. Remember what we talked about, Catherine said softly. This is your song, your moment. Whatever happens, I'm proud of you for being here." The words felt strange on her tongue. When had she last expressed pride without attaching conditions or expectations? Emma nodded, her eyes clearer and more confident than Catherine had seen in months. When the stage manager called Emma's name, Catherine gave her daughter's hand one final squeeze before watching her walk toward the stage. Instead of returning to her seat immediately, Catherine lingered in the wings, her heart racing faster than before any business presentation she had ever given. As the first notes of the accompaniment began, she held her breath, her knuckles white against the velvet curtain. Emma stepped onto the stage, no longer the frightened little girl from before. She touched the pendant lightly, looked down at the audience, where her mother, Matthew, and Lily sat together. Matthew gently clapped to the rhythm, his warm eyes just as they had been that first time, the small gesture that had saved everything. Emma began singing "You Are My Sunshine," the song her father used to sing to her every night, not the classical piece Mr. Henderson had selected and rehearsed for weeks. Her clear, emotional voice resonated throughout the auditorium. Catherine gripped Matthew's hand when she realized this was the first time in years that Emma had sung without any fear. As the song ended, the entire audience rose to their feet in applause. Emma curtsied, her smile radiant as sunshine, not for a prize, but because she had rediscovered the joy in music. After the competition, Catherine didn't ask about awards or scores. Instead, she hugged her daughter tightly, whispering, "I'm proud of you because you were brave." The words were simple but profound, a new foundation for their relationship based on acceptance rather than achievement. 6 months later, Catherine was no longer the robot CEO that employees used to whisper about behind her back. She still ran the company with efficiency and vision, but with a new schedule, leaving the office at exactly 5 o'clock 3 days a week and dedicating Sundays entirely to family day. The executive team had adapted to these changes after initial resistance, some even following her example of creating more boundaries between work and personal life. The company's performance had not suffered. If anything, the more balanced approach had led to increased creativity and employee satisfaction. Emma joined the city's children's choir not for competitions but for the joy of music. Lily joined too, the girls becoming best friends who spent weekends baking cookies and making up silly songs in Emma's apartment or crafting in Matthew's workshop. The teddy bear audience still assembled regularly for private concerts, though now they were joined by Catherine whenever possible. Matthew designed a music space at the community center, sponsored by Davis Media Group, where families could sing together regardless of skill level. The project combined his carpentry skills with his love of music, creating an environment where children could explore sound without pressure or judgment. In Catherine's office, a photograph of Emma on stage at the Angel Voice competition was prominently displayed, her daughter's genuine smile capturing the moment she reclaimed her love of singing. Beside it was a new picture: Catherine, Emma, Matthew, and Lily, smiling brightly during a weekend picnic, holding handmade ukuleles that Matthew had taught them to play. The instruments were simple but beautiful, crafted from warm cherry wood with inlaid mother-of-pearl details. The ukulele lessons had become a Sunday tradition, filled with laughter and imperfection and genuine enjoyment. Sometimes, healing doesn't come from achievement or perfection, but from small moments: a gentle clap, a warm look, and the courage to recognize that true love has no conditions. As Catherine watched Emma and Lily practice for their upcoming choir performance, she caught Matthew's eye across the room. His smile held understanding, companionship, and perhaps something more. A future none of them had imagined possible. The music box played softly on the shelf nearby, its simple melody a reminder that the most beautiful songs often come from the simplest notes, played with an open heart.
Hi there, and welcome to Stories, a place where stories aren't just told, they are felt. Have you ever paused your day just to reflect on a moment that changed someone's life forever? Have you ever believed in second chances, in quiet heroes, in justice showing up when the least expected? Here on Stories, we dive deep into the lives of ordinary people facing extraordinary situations. You will meet single dads who rise from heartbreak, young dreamers who refuse to give up, and everyday voices who stand up for what's right, even when the world tells them to stay silent. Every story we share is crafted with care to heal, to move, and to remind you that the smallest actions can spark the biggest changes. We believe that storytelling has the power to connect us, to open our hearts, and to help us see the beauty in resilience, kindness, and truth. If you're someone who values depth over noise, meaning over flash, and stories that stay with you after the screen fades, then you're in the right place. So take a deep breath, hit the subscribe button, and join us each week as we explore stories that matter, stories that may change the way you see the world. This is Anne Stories, and we're so glad you're here.